Alright, so today we're going to be talking about if, else if, and else statements, i.e. conditional statements. So before we talk about that, let's think of a motivating or perhaps realistic real-life example. You have a rather rotund friend, let's call him Ash, who has decided that he really needs to lose weight, and he wants your help creating a workout schedule for him. You come together and you decide to create a schedule for every day of the week. You label days Sunday through Saturday with the numbers 0 through 6 respectively. And on the odd days, i.e. 1, 3, and 5, we want to go to leg day. So you want your schedule to print out leg day. On the even days, except for day 0 or Sunday, you guys decide it'd be best if you did some ab work. So you wanted to print out abs day. And on Sunday, Sunday is for resting. So on Sunday, you just print out cheat day, where he can let himself go out, go a little bit more. That being said though, because of some of Ash's habits, regardless of what day of the week it is, he always needs to end his day with an ice cream sundae. So at the end of your program, regardless of what day it is, you want to print out get ice cream, regardless of whether he's working out or doesn't work out. Essentially, what we want our code to do is that we want it to do different things depending on what day it is. In this case, the day is the condition, and then the action we want to do will change depending on what the condition is. Hence the use of if, else, if, and else loops. Let's dive into each one of them individually. Intuitively, they are exactly what you would think they are. An if loop, essentially you write it like this is the syntax. And you write a boolean and you check whether this statement here is true or not. If it is true, you just do the stuff that you put inside the if brackets. If it's not, you just ignore it and continue going on.
What happens if it's not true?
You ignore it and you go on. That's a good question. So we can start with these two relatively straightforward examples. Can anyone tell me what each block of code will print out? Feel free to pause the video to think about it and unpause to find the answer. Okay, here's the answer. The left one will print out x is 7 because this evaluates x is 7 and x indeed is 7, so it prints it out. The second one will print out nothing because in this case x is 3. 3 is not equal to 7, so it just ignores this and just doesn't do anything. An else statement is kind of like the yin to the if statement's yang, or the yang to the if statement's yin. Let's say that the if statement does fail, and it doesn't do what the stuff is doing here. Let's say this is false. Then in that case, the else statement will take over and do its stuff instead. So if succeeds, it does this, and then nothing else, skips here. But if this is not true, this fails, then it will skip here, do this, and then continue running on. So same deal. What does each block of code print? And then obviously pause the video and unpause when you want to find the answer. All right, here's the answer. Yeah, again, relatively straightforward. When it is 7, you only execute the if statement and print out it is 7, and you ignore the else statement. When x is not 7, you are printing out, you're ignoring, you see that you check the if, you check that it's false, you don't do any of this stuff, you skip to the else and just do whatever the else tells you, printing out that it is not 7. Now we have an else if statement, where an else if statement executes if everything above it evaluates to false, and then you check if this is true. Else if is different than if and else in that you can have as many else ifs as you want to check as many conditionals as you want. That being said, only at most one of them, or perhaps even none of them, may execute at a time, and you only even check the conditional if all the previous conditions failed. So in this example, let's say we check this. If this turns out to be true, we just do this, we ignore all of this. In this example, we would check this. If this is true, we do this, ignore all of this. But let's say this is false. If this is false, then we check this. if this is true, we do this and ignore the rest. Or if this is false again, then we keep on going to the next one and we check this. If this is true, we do this, whatever's in here. But if it's false, we just continue on with the rest of our code. Last example, similar deal. You would check each of these and you would only check the next one if the previous ones all return true, all evaluated to false. Only difference between this one and the previous one is we have an else statement. So in this case, our code would always at least do something, as opposed to in this case, if all these fail, it would just do nothing. So this is a good, because there are so many different ways that an else-if statement could work, a good exercise what you can do at home is to copy each of these codes down into your computer, change x into different numbers, think about what would be printed out, and then check running it and checking if it's right or not. As you can see, both of them have one if statement, two else if statements. One big difference mainly being is this one has an else statement, while this one does not. And you guys can think about like how that would change the behavior of the code. Other things to note in terms of just syntactically to make sure your logic is correct. Before else or else if statements, somewhere before them you have to have an if statement. You can't lead off any conditional with an else or else if, or the computer will be angry and yell at you. If you do have else if and else statements, else must always be the last thing in your kind of logic chain, because it's kind of like, think of else as if everything else fails, do this. You want it to be your like last resort. We seem to have another question from the audience.
Can we have more than one else statement?
That is a good question, and no, you can only have one else statement with exactly one if statement. So let's say if you have another if statement that checks something else, then you can have another one else after that. But if you do not have that, then no, you can only have one else statement. Or you could have zero else statements, as we've seen in some previous examples. So again, don't write code like this. If you do, you'll look silly. Now, going back to Ash, we can write his schedule. So I'm going to leave it as an exercise to you to think about how you would write it. There's multiple ways you could go about it. And in about a few seconds after I stop talking, I'll show you one possible solution that you could write. Okay, here it is. So first we initiate whatever day it is. That was from the starter code. So the first thing we can check is whether it's a Sunday or not, because Sunday is kind of like our special day, so it's like our cheat day. So if the day is 0, we print out cheat day, and then we like. However, let's say that it's not Sunday. Let's say that it's Monday through Saturday. Then we have Monday through Saturday. Then we go on to our next one. So let's say this fails, and we check whether the day is even or odd. Keep in mind, we've learned this before. If you take modulo 2 equals 0, it checks if it's even or not. So this essentially checks if the day is even. Note that since we already checked whether it's a Sunday and we know it isn't, we don't have to explicitly check again if it's a Sunday or not. We just have to check if it's even. So if it's even, we're going to print out abs day. And if it fails everything else, that means it has to be an odd day. And in odd days, we know you want to do leg days. And so we print out legs day. And of course, at the end, regardless of what day it is, we also print out we want to get ice cream. So after all of these conditionals, we simply print out get ice cream. That's the end of our code. Any questions? All right, cool.